Writer Junot Díaz is a Dominican-American from New Jersey. He grew up in Parlin, went to Rutgers, and sets his fiction in the state, including his Pulitzer Prize-winning novel where the character Oscar Wilde grows up in Paterson, home to that other famous New Jersey author, William Carlos Williams.
Look, a place like New Jersey invites simplistic decisions around it. Some people never want to leave it. Some people leave it and then never want to recognize it again. They just can't wait to get out. And I'm a kind of a person, I left, but for me, New Jersey continues to be a huge part of my life. I have no problems with keeping a relationship with it, with returning to it all the time, you know? And I guess I didn't want to do the one or the other that so many of my friends were doing. They wanted to get out of Jersey, never wanted to talk about it, or they were just such hardcore Jersey heads that, you know, everything outside of it didn't make any difference.
Junot grew up here and, you know, was an American child of a certain kind, was a Dominican American. So while he always had this other place in mind that was, you know, the Dominican Republic, his home was here. And that shows in the writing, you know, he writes about both places. But you can tell the one that the most fertile subject matter for him is New Jersey more than anything else.
While challenging, I still think the source of all my imagination and all my artistic interests was living in this kind of weird, in-between, challenging space. London Terrace is a strange space. It's actually a neighborhood name in Parlin, on Route 9, on Ernston Road, basically squashed in between Old Bridge and Sayreville. It's the kind of space that I always say one would, if it didn't exist, you'd have to make it up. It's so kooky. The crazy part was that it was a community that we thought was never going to collapse this way, but once they closed Global Landfill, they had a huge landfill there, and in the 80s they shut it down. And while the landfill was less than a mile from the neighborhood, you know, the prices were kind of kept low. As soon as the landfill shut down, the prices rocketed up where the kind of community that I belonged to could no longer afford to live there. So the strangest thing, the thing that really bothered us the most, the thing that most afflicted us growing up, this landfill, was actually the damn thing that held us all together. As soon as it was gone, we were gone. We never imagined. We used to curse that damn landfill. Little did we know, it held the universe together.
Well, I'd read his stories that had been in the New Yorker before I worked there. I think he started publishing around 95, and I went to work there in 97. And, you know, noticed this new voice in the magazine. People were discovering him in the New Yorker, people were discovering him in general. I mean, that was when his first book came out around that time. And it was just an excitement. It was a very fresh voice. It was a very original voice.
The story is what the title says it is. Dating instructions for a Dominican teenager living in urban New Jersey.
If the girl's from around the way, take her to El Cibao for dinner. Order everything in your busted-up Spanish. Let her correct you if she's Latina, and amaze her if she's black. If she's not from around the way, Wendy's will do.
There's just a bounce in his sentences. They kind of lift up off the page, full of references to cultural things you may or may not get, full of Spanish words, which Junot's particular about not italicizing, because this is, he feels that these are part of the language. You don't want to set them off. They're just part of the spoken language of his characters. And, you know, full of profanity, full of sexual explicitness, but there's just a real life and a rhythm there.
In conversation, most people don't pause for a very long time to build a place with words. They simply sketch it very quickly. They'll tell you they're in Raritan, they'll tell you that they're, you know, in Matawan, they'll tell you on the Jersey Shore, but they assume that you know what that means. And I think that my book often sort of, you know, is more interested in the spirit of New Jersey than sort of the letter of Jersey. I mean, that probably will change, but strategically that's been my core. I kind of am obsessed with getting New Jersey right in a way that's more, I think, difficult to characterize, you know?
And Junot spent a long time working on Oscar Wilde, and it shows, you know. I mean, he came up with something that was as far from a short story as you can get. It's a very dense, very long, very involved narrative novel.
I just loved the fact that so many writers were connected with Paterson, that there was so much literature, and that I was writing about a dude who wanted to be a writer. And I was like, the best place to place him in New Jersey is Paterson. That is our left bank, you know? So I had to go and discover it. Luckily, I had a friend of mine from Paterson who was a great sort of ambassador for the place, kind of took me around, but it was a long, long period of research and exploration. This is from the opening sections of The Brief Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde. In September, Oscar headed to Rutgers, New Brunswick. His mother gave him $100 and his first kiss in 5 years. His deal, a box of condoms. Use them all, his uncle said, and then added, on girls. And with it an optimism that here among the thousands of young people, he would find someone like him. That, alas, did not happen. The white kid looked at his black skin and his afro and treated him with inhuman cheeriness. The kids of color, upon hearing him speak and seeing him move his body, shook their heads. You are not Dominican. And he said over and over again, but I am. Soy Dominicano. Dominicano soy.
You know, he spent years on that book thinking about it. It wasn't something he could whip off, but it took years to make it feel as though it was just being spoken to you, you know.
Writing is just an excuse to keep me around the thing I love the most. For me, books, in strange, anti-intuitive way, though we read in solitude, we read for communion. For me, books remind me in a palpable way how deeply connected I am and how deeply dependent I am in this larger cosmology of human souls and human minds. That, you know, in many ways, books, in my solitary pursuit of them, remind me that I am not in any way alone.